Totoka Road. And is that what you want to know?
That's fine.
Okay. Jean?
I'm Jenny McMaster. I'm a youngster. I haven't been here that long, about 30 years. Some of my ancestors I have found rather recently did come from this area. I never ever thought I came from the Midwest, and I never thought I had any relatives around. But some of them did.
I'm Andy Trudeau. I was born here, and I still live here on Route 80 in North Branford, just a half a mile from where I was born.
Al Provenzano, born in Twin Lakes Road. Been around a little bit, came back here to live.
Ralph Coulter. I was born in Stone's Throw in the Trap Rock. I still live in town.
Joe Barone. I was born in Bridgeport, and my family moved in when I was 1 in 1922, and we lived on Twin Lakes Road. I now live on Briarwood Drive.
I'm Donna Daly, and I live on Branford Road. Been here since 1921. Moved here in New York. Went to school in this building.
Anthony Daly. I was born where the Dairy Queen is. That's like 139 in Route 80, 1919. I've lived here all my life, and I still live on the same property that I was born on. I live on Branford Road.
Should I say, I was in Norfolk for 5 years. My mother and father was there.
What's your name?
Madeline de Simone. I was Madeline Cabana.
I'm August Cabana, and I lived up on Lanes Pond Road. At the time, it was the last house up there, and the old house, as far as I know, is still there. We were told that it was moved over from Guilford. I got my early education in Norfolk, and Gordon and I have been kind of reminiscent, and I remember walking around this building. It was a school that was comparable to the William Douglas, and we used to, that's when the thought of kind of mixing and integrating these school systems together. So every so often, the Norfolk pupils were taken to North Branford to this school, and they from here, and we would have a little competition. I graduated from William Douglas in 1932 and went to Maiden High School, graduated from there. And went to war, World War II, still lived in Norfolk. And when I returned, I found an open lot, and the marriage bug bit me. So we found this lot, and we built in North Haven. However, my heart is still in the town of Norfolk.
Emily Moore. I was born in North Branford and lived on a farm, and then I moved down on Totoka Road, not too far from the farm, and I've been here all my life also.
And I'm Elsie Ford, and I was born in North Branford too. I was born down in Mutual's house, and then my father built the house at the junction of 22 and 80, and then he also bought a farm, so partly grew up on the farm too. Then I went away. My adult life, I worked out of state, and then when I retired, I lived in the same place.
Marie Freon. I live on Twin Lakes Road, and I was born in North Branford. I'm still here.
Shirley Cole. I live on Branford Road, and I'm a newcomer. I've only been here 41 years.
And I'm Owen Cole, and I was born here, up where the dam is. We had to move away. We moved to Guilford, then to Branford,
I might want to add too that when we were going from one school to the other, we didn't have the modern buses that we have today with comfortable seats. We had old Model T Fords with wooden benches. And Lester Williams was our, had the school bus contract at the time, and he was the one who was transporting us back and forth.
I think there's several of us that went to school here in this building.
Yeah.
Up until seventh grade,
Eighth grade.
eighth grade.
First through eighth, graduated.
But then we go to Jerome Harrison.
Yeah, this happened, the
I
Twin
went to
Lakes
Joe
there.
Harrison, 29.
This on the seventh
Yeah.
grade,
Jerome Harrison opened up in 29.
and eighth grade.
And then we went down
But I
there,
remember
seventh and
the-
eighth grade.
Right, we went here to the 6th, and,
I remember some of us went to that one-room school on Mill Road
yeah,
from September, from September until the first of the year when Jerome Harrison was completed. It wasn't ready for school in September. They had
We've already heard from Augie about the Model T school buses with the wooden seats. Does anybody have a favorite story about a teacher or something they learned or something that happened?
The famous wooden toilet sat right out there in that left corner. And the well to get the water was right over here, and I don't think there was any worry about contamination at that time.
And I don't think there was any bus for us. We walked.
We all walked to school. First, second, and third were in this room. Fourth and fifth were, and sixth were in that room. And this room here had 7 and 8.
yeah.
But when my particular class graduated, we went to Norfolk and graduated from the Old Stone Church.
Every other year.
Yeah.
I did too.
we had the same thing, only when we get to 7th and 8th, we graduated to Jerome Harrison. And then from Jerome Harrison, we took our diploma for 8th grade at the old community house at William Douglas, where the community house sat alongside of the William Douglas School. And there were only 3 of us in 3rd grade here, by the way.
And then we didn't go to high school, so we went to Fairhaven for our first year at the high school, and then on to the
Or commercial.
Do you remember who those 3 were?
Yes, it was, it would have been Eleanor Farkash, Clara Lindsley, and myself. And we were here, which might be an interesting story. We had graduated to the Shoreline Bus Company, and John Dwyer was the school bus driver. We left here during the height of the storm, and he got as far as the bank on 139, and the trees were falling in front of him. And he put his head out the window and backed all the way to here. And the wind was so fierce, they would only let us off the bus one at a time. And we stayed here during the height of the hurricane.
The hurricane of
1938.
Boy, that is a story. Anyone else remember something about school?
We used to skip off on the lunch hour around May, go down to Todd's swimming hole in May, sneak off, then come back to school after
Where's
a dip in the river down there.
in the river? Whereabouts?
Down by the condominium.
Where the condominiums are
Oh.
today. Todd's, they call it Todd's Hole.
Todd's Hole.
Swimming hole.
It's like located right at Harrison Road Bridge, is where Todd Hall was. As the road comes down, the old household of Todd, Mr. Todd, is where the Monroe complex is now. Right there on 139.
No, the only thing I can remember is that a bunch of us got lost one day. We really got it when we got back. It really wasn't intentional. But I remember the Mayflowers, and I remember it snowing in May.
How far did you have to walk to school?
Well, we walked
Jerome Harrison, you walked here, both.
And how? So that's what, 3 or 4 miles?
No, Jerome Harrison's about 2 from here.
About 2 miles.
I know a lot of times we would walk the old trolley tracks, the backside, we'd go down through there and adventured. One time, I'll never forget, we were down at Jerome Harrison School, I was there, and then we got late there, and we said that the snow would break it up nice, and we were floating down a nice thing. I'll never forget, Mrs. Carlson was the teacher there, and she believed it.
I was trying to remember some of the teachers' names. Miss Cox, remember? Miss Cox. And Miss McGovern.
Miss Coffee.
Miss Coffee. Miss Coffee was quick with the yardstick and slapping you around when you didn't behave.
Child abuse.
And we didn't dare go home and tell our parents we got whipped because we didn't behave.
Mrs. Doody.
Yeah,
Mrs. Doody. Harry Doody.
Mr. Hobbs, he used to leave his old Packard parked outside here, run all day because he couldn't afford to put antifreeze in it. These fellows were older than I was. We came down, they used to fix the train tracks with an old push cart. Well, every now and then, we used to steal the push cart. Only they got caught one day. And they all bailed off the push cart and forgot me. They had to chase the push cart. And I don't think we told her that. But I wasn't involved in that, with the oldest boys.
Was it they? Was it Mr. Provenzano?
Oh, yeah. And Joe, and a couple more that weren't here. Anthony lived close here, so he didn't have a chance to get into it. Ralph was in it too.
Will they admit to having done this, or?
You remember when we stole a push cart?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, really?
We got all the way down to Branford, to the pump.
Go to the drum court.
All the way down to the Branford, you travel it?
Well, yeah, it did get going down the hill.
It's all down, it's coming back.
Never forget the night we got caught. Mr. Farkas, remember that?
That was when we bailed off, and you guys left me on.
Ray O'Brien was the only one. He was the hero. He stopped.
Oh, no,
them.
I'm talking about when we were going to
Yeah.
school.
So he jumped on, and Mr. Farkas was out, and the tracks going like this. He couldn't. Nobody would stop that thing. So we all got down, and of course we were Mr. McKernan's boys, being in the drum corps. He was more or less the sole sponsor of us. We could do no wrong. And I remember him saying, "Oh, you boy, you gotta behave. Don't do that again." That was it.
You mentioned the drum corps. How many of you were in the drum corps? Oh my, well represented here.
1933.
That was the national championship team? Or the corps in the country?
It was founded in 1933.
The drum section was national champion.
Twice, right?
World champion.
39 and 41.
Wow. And
Did
you play the drums?
Yeah. You did in 39, and then by 41, some of the fellows got old, so they couldn't. Had to go into the senior class, and they walked away with that also.
I think everybody was proud of
Still good.
Oh, anybody played the bicycle?
that. You're all gone?
Well, at the present time, we meet on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. Anybody wants to hear us? We
Oh, yeah, we're still there.
regularly.
We're planning a dedication at the library. It was the Revolutionary Training Grounds around Memorial Day. We told the boys will play.
We played there for the dedication of it. I don't see why not.
Did you really?
Yeah, we did.
Played for the dedication of the Atwater Library?
Yeah, we played when they put the cornerstone in also.
Wow. A lot of things. Just before we opened the meeting, Andy was telling me that he had, his parents' father had the first gas station in town?
Service station, right? What made me bring it up was that the picture of the Lover store is missing the 2 Gulf gas pumps that were out there. Remember that on the side? And Mr. Lover used to sit in that little shed down back so he didn't have to work too much. And we had the original service station that started out. And I can name you where they were if you're interested. Some of the buildings are still standing.
Yeah.
Well, the original was Finky.
Oh, yeah.
The original.
That was on the corner of West Pond. Yeah, you're right.
My end of town. That's right.
Yeah, right.
You got a boat pillow. Take your tank pillow both ways.
You heard what he said?
No.
He said that's where the bird, like booze used to come from, Branford.
Finky's.
Finky's. That was on the corner of West Pond and Route 80.
Pulled it in the brook.
Well, Lover's Store also had the post office too, didn't it? Wasn't there a post office?
Yeah, but that was after.
Little small post
Yeah,
office?
on where the Thompson Lindsay office is there.
We used to go there once in a while, if they had a nickel or a dime, they get a cup of soup or something
Yeah.
for one shot.
Did Schultz's store have a gas pump there one time too?
Not that I hear.
One of the old ambulance?
I don't remember that.
They had it.
By the great barber?
I think we have
You're
lots
right.
of pictures.
I think it did.
Huh?
I think it did.
You could be
If
right.
I remember correctly, I think it was a gas pump. Because I can recall my dad telling about that, where the great barber is, and they put the horses underneath that. When you came down off of Great Hill, North Street, you came down North Street, and they had it there at the time. That was the only way up on top.
That must have been one of his beers that store, though.
Earl
Beers.
Well, that
He had the
could be.
first one.
That-
Schultz took it over and acted.
How much was gas?
15 cents a gallon when I was a child.
I remember selling it 8 gallons for $1.
Tank full?
8 gallons.
8 and 9 gallons for $1 in 89, 38, 39. Yeah.
Oh, and you mentioned that your parents lived up where the lake is now.
Right.
What was your father? What did he do?
My father was, you mean after the farming deal? I mean, after they give up farming.
Oh, he was a
When
farmer.
that went, then we went to Guilford and they bought a big farm over there and they lost that in the fire. Cloverdale Farm on 77, that all burned. And then my father went, after that fire, they lost everything. I mean, old timers didn't believe in insurance. No insurance. And so then he went to driving truck for Nygaard's Express in Branford. And he drove right up to the end down there.
But your grandfather lived up on the lake in the old boathouse.
Where the boathouse,
Where the boathouse
boathouse was, that was the house that they owned. I mean, they moved it to the lakeside so they could use it for a boathouse. And that's where they lived. The maple trees are still standing up there where the house set in between. They were still standing. The last time I was up there, I haven't been up there in a good many years, but I know right where it was.
Did you go to school here too?
No, because I was too young. When they had to move out, see, I was born in 1921, and I believe the dam started in somewhere 22, 23.
Well, look at me, I wasn't wrong.
Well, anyway, the dam, we had to move out, so I went to Guilford, and I was going to go to school in Guilford, and then the barns burned over there. So then I was educated in Branford as well. And he was talking about the schoolhouse here. The Mill Plain Schoolhouse in Branford was a one-room deal. There was a row here, high school kids, 8th grade over here, 7th grade over here, 6th grade over here, and all the way down the line. And when you were down there in 1st grade, if you didn't pay attention, one of these pukes over here made you. I'll tell you that. And when it came to carting wood in for the wood box, it didn't make any difference whether you were a 1st grader or whether you was over here. You still carried that stick of wood, whatever you could carry into the wood box. And you had the tree holder that he talked about to go outside.
You know, Owen, can you tell us a little bit about building the dam? Do you remember any of that or how it all came about up here at the lake?
Up at the lake?
Yeah, the building of the dam.
Oh, I don't know too much about the building of the dam. All I know is I think these guys can tell you that they had a train track built all the way up to Trap Rock, all the way up along back of the Gidney's house and went up through there. But then there was an awful lot of property that different people owned that hated to give up to go to the water company. I mean, my grandfather was one of
he didn't want to give up his farm. Nobody wanted to give up their farm them days. Because that was their livelihood. And they just had to. What's that old saying? You do, or if you don't do, you will do, you know? So they had to tell us.
You know, I think it's rather interesting we were talking about stores. My father had a store down at Route 80 and 22. And the way he got there I thought was rather interesting. When he was a young man, he was in the quartermaster corps in the Italian Navy. And he went around the world with the Italian Navy. Then I guess he decided to come to America. And he got a job through a relative of his. And because he had that experience, he got a job with Blake's when they were building the Stevenson Dam. And he used to cart equipment with a mule from New Haven up to the Stevenson Dam. Then when the quarry was opened, he came up here, remember the commissary?
Right.
And they opened up that store, and he was in that commissary. And then eventually, he used to tell the story of Lynch coming to him one day and wanting a pig killed. And that's how he started to butcher. And he finally opened up the store in the butcher shop.
Well, we lived there with
And I was going to say also about that house, and I remember your father coming down there many times. He was a carpenter, and as extra jobs, he used to come around, and I remember he built our back steps.
Well, my father was a carpenter around the Stevenson Dam before he came here. Yeah. When the dam was finished, he came here to work for Copper.
I think a great many times must have done that.
Tell who your father is, because we don't know.
My father is Cavalier Port.
Cavalier Court.
And the store was where?
And the store was down where our house is now, down where Forty's Market is.
Oh.
That's how it started. Back somewhere around 1914, 1915,
Right.
16.
Elsie, could you elaborate a little on the commissary? I don't remember too much about it, but I do remember the terrible fire, and I've been trying to explain to Gordon and Janet where it was located. It was down around where the pump station area, where the shed area.
Where the sand plant.
That's what I mean, right in that area.
And
Would you explain it sort of well enough that
It opened up for the people that were working at the floor.
Well, they had a long building with like a garage.
It was a
With
store.
a hallway in the middle and rooms on each side. Each person was rented those rooms, and everybody got one room. And, sometimes they cook outside, but most of the time they inside.
And then eventually they had a house there.
Yeah, well, we lived in a house, it was a two-family duplex house. Store.
Near the commissary?
Right in the commissary, yeah, right next to the store. Old Joe Walton had the store then. Was that the father?
down Florida.
do you recall when the fire
He
was?
just passed away.
The fire,
It must have been
remember the Bill Buskies that,
separate grade?
Mr. Bill Buskey, we were in this school.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember, yeah.
One of the girls got burnt. Wait, that's it.
Annie got burned.
You're talking about the commissary fire?
Yeah.
And 2 people that died in it?
Yes.
That was before we had our fire department too. They had to get fire engines from Branford by the time they got here. Fire burned completely to the ground. I remember we went there and all you could see was parts of human flesh and bones and the corner of one spot that was terrible. The kids all got up.
What prompted the formation of the North Branford Fire Department? Was there anything? Who?
We needed one. The organization was taken up, and I wasn't old enough to join it at that time. But my father was one of the originals.
Up on Harrison.
It was stored at Harrison's garage.
Harrison Garage, yeah.
And when it was delivered into North Branford, it was loaded with everything but water. And it cost the town $6,800. And the first fire that they had was a brush fire. The woman had gotten up at the town meeting and said she was writing to the president because she was against it. And the fire truck got here like 5 o'clock, and 8 o'clock she had the first brush fire.
The woman who protested against fire?
Protested it, right.
This is Big Rock.
Big,
What's the name of it?
Bajoff.
Mrs. Bader.
Get that out.
We've also been talking about the stories, but you know, your father started a market garden, Jim.
It was 1933 when the fire department started. And I happened to be the youngest member of it.
38.
38, I'm sorry, jump start, 38. So that when we celebrated our 50th anniversary back here in '88, I got a nice card that said I've been a member, an active member for 50 years. Now I'm going on 53-something years as a charter member.
And you're still a member of the fire department?
Yes, I'm on the roll call.
Wow.
And you're still a young man, so you have
Right.
many, many years in it.
That it'll lead you to believe it. I don't think people know what volunteers are. Because what the town gets out of the men and the women now that go to all these calls for all these years.
Do you remember any of the fires?
I remember many, many of them.
There's,
You must have been over our place for a couple of days when we had the big barn fire.
oh,
Yes, and that when he
A
had.
whole week almost, and they
was
kept
on
coming
his-
back up.
He was on his way home from a stag party for Alec Baloots. And when I saw him at Duties, at 6 o'clock the next morning, I saw him, and his pants were almost to his knees.
No doubt.
His white shirt wasn't recognizable.
Oh.
I mean, up from the bottom, not down from the top.
Going into the brook to put the bump in. Those were his pants he was buried in, by the way.
oh, there are some the scrapbook that I bought, the lumberyard fire here.
That's terrible.
There's also the one,
My grandma's big house.
it was a old tenement house where the road mix plant is now.
Two babies got hurt.
And 2 babies were trapped in downstairs. We couldn't get to them. We pulled about the 3rd baby out with a shovel, pulled a crib to the bed, the crib to the window with a shovel, and we took the baby out. And across the street, the Camaradas lived. We brought the baby up there, and they decided at that time, I believe it was Mrs. Schuschler, that the child was bad enough to go to the hospital, and they ought to get it there as quick as possible. So again, my father's car was made into an ambulance, and we were harassed because the driver was driving like a fool. He said, take the child to the hospital. But the child died at the hospital. Anyone that's interested could see it in the book there. I think it was something like 22 people were made homeless at that particular fire, and it was condemned. They knocked it down.
Where was that house located from?
Where the present road mix plant is at New Haven Trap Rock now, or Tilcon.
Up at the hill there?
Where the asphalt plant is, right there by Route 80, across from the Commons.
And it was a public road. Quarry Road was a public road which ran right by the trap rock at that time,
Yeah, before the 80, that was the main road.
Yeah.
The remaining section of that quarry road he's talking about is at the bottom of the hill by the quarry where Forest Road comes out. There's 3 little brown houses. Well, that continued up around, and it came out in approximately the area of the package store. In fact, if you look now that the leaves are off, you'll be able to see the old roadway of the old Route 80 that went through there.
Which packet store?
North Branford package store.
Oh.
You'll see it, and if you look
Oh, you
down,
mean up on the hill, you can see that level?
no, not that high
Oh.
up. It's like one tier up. If you look from the package store, it will be approximately with the same height as the package store. And if you follow it all the way down, you get down to Ravitzi's, you'll see where it came out onto where it crosses this road.
It came out down by where we lived.
Yeah, right. And then, in fact, if it crossed through here is part of it.
And then it continues from Ravizzi's and goes up along the hill and crosses the railroad track. Because the bridge that we use for Route 80 wasn't made for cars, it was made for the trolley cars.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not.
Railroad crossing and the parts of the road are still up there. And in front of the driveway to the shopping center, there's a road that goes up into the right and to the left. The left is right back to Route 80, but to the left is how the track rock gets up to get to the track up there.
What
storage area. They brought all the cement in boxcars, and Joey Munson and Mikey Miga, fellows from Massachusetts that boarded you, used to carry 2 or 3 bags of cement at a time, and that's kids too. That's how you got to know. But they stored all the big pipe for tunneling under the mountain, the small gauge track that dug the tunnel under Totoka Mountain that comes out over there in, by Route 22. And it was a general place for delivery of material.
Another point with the dam to add what Anthony said, my father and mother had often told us where the Echo Ridge Turkey Farm was, that building was a boarding house. They ran a boarding house for all the laborers that were employed up at building the dam before they moved out.
Remember, Blakely had all those horses and oxen and
All
carts.
horse on, mostly all horse drawn stuff.
Sure.
Mr. Volta, did your father work on the quarry?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Father, my uncle, 2 uncles. They came from New York State, and I believe they were New York trapped there for a while. Uncle Bert, yeah. And business was bad, and I guess they came over here. His father came over here, and they're originally from Newburgh, New York, that way.
Natalie the Coulter too, right? My brother and sister talking
Right.
here.
Somebody mentioned another occupation over here.
I grew up on a farm. My father came from Italy in 1890, settled in Long Island for a short time, then went back to Italy, got married, and came back with my mother, and bought this farm on Totoka Road. And there were 6 of us in the family. We were all born in that one old farmhouse. 5 girls, and I had 1 brother. And farm life as a kid was not easy, and it still isn't easy. I had no mother, so it meant my father was responsible for 6 children, 1 which was a baby. So we had many chores to do. We get up in the morning, we had cows, we had 2 horses, we had always raised a couple of pigs, and we had many chickens. So we all had our own chores, outside chores, plus inside work.
What happened to your mother? Your mother died?
My mother died when my younger sister was born. So we had all this outside work plus our inside work. The outside work got done, the inside work, maybe it didn't get done. But anyway, we had plenty of food, a very strict father. Because we were girls and all this work had to be done, we had to do it. Up in the morning to milk. Milk at night, as somebody said, we had 2 wood stoves, a wood stove in the kitchen and a potbelly stove in the other room. We had to bring wood in for that. No wash machine, no electricity, no telephone, the outside toilet.
Cut that broccoli, I'll never forget that.
That was later. I think when I was 13, we finally got the electricity, and we got a telephone then. And then when we did get those, we were all a little bit older. Then my father got an electric stove and everything that went with it.
Do you know what year or approximately?
When I was 13. I'm 75. So you tell me. And Florence Packer was our neighbor. And my father couldn't speak English, so Florence Packer after school, she'd go home, and then she'd walk back to our house to play. And my father would say to us in Italian, "Tell her to go home, you got work to do." So I'd say, "Florence, you got to go home, we got work to do." See, Florence's folks had a farm. They didn't have to work like I did because they had 3 or 4 brothers there. have we had the laundry. The laundry would come and pick up the clothes in a big bag and then bring it back the next day or the next day. And we didn't hang them right away. And then when you hung the clothes, you took them out of that bag and you shook them. Were they ever wrinkled? They were so wrinkled. But anyway, we did.
You mean they came back wet?
They came wet wash. That's
Wet
what we did the best we could. What else?
They had a good farm, raised a lot of good vegetables there too.
We did market gardening also. So when we weren't milking cows and worried about the chores, we were picking and grilling vegetables. And there was a fellow that lived in the center of Totoka. His name was Clark Russell. And he used to raise corn. And then my father would go there and buy it as seed corn, because he had no other place to get the seed corn. So Clark Russell, when the corn was ready, he'd come over with 2 big bags, like in a big white heavy flour bag, very thick. And we had no place to put it now at home, because next to our kitchen, we had like a woodshed or something, and maybe the mice would get in there. So my father says, we can't put it in there, so it went in our bedroom. So we had 2 big bags of corn in our bedroom, 3 in one bed, 2 that way and 1 this way. But anyway, let's see what else. And my mattress, the best mattress, corn husk mattress, made out of ticking. It had an opening like this. Every once in a while, you put your hand in there and you fuzz it up. Flour bag sheets.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Flour bag bloomers. Well covered. We were well covered.
Madeline, you said your mother washed in the brook?
That's right. It was a brook in back of the barn, and she made a little pond there, and we used to wash our clothes down there. I went down there with my mother many times to help her. Oh, yeah.
Is that the old scrub board?
That's right. They have a stone for that. Never mind that. She was
Wait,
there in the stone.
And at first the clothes were boiled
Oh,
on
yes.
the old copper
Tub.
Yeah. And then they were taken out of this, put in another tub, and carried maybe 200 or 300 feet to the brook. And there she made herself a little opening in this little brook, and she found herself a nice big flat stone. And here they were rinsed.
That's right.
Done
That
the
was
final
finished
wash.
once a day.
How long did it take you to do the wash? All day?
No, because the clothes was already boiled. They was already rinsed, so we went down there just to get the smell of the acid, because he boiled the acid, then wash the clothes, drain the acid, boil the water, put the white clothes in, and sterilize them.
Speaking of farms, I remember when I was going to school, the boys would have, Henry and Charlie, they'd have to get up and milk the cows before going to school.
I had a milk cows before I went to school, and then walked down to Totoka to take the trolley to go to New Haven.
See, and then when I remember my first job, I remember having to get up about 4:45 in the morning to get that first buck into the Haven. And I remember that we used to have those stone sinks.
Yes.
And I swear, the water would come out frozen.
My father would go to New Haven a couple of times a week, or at least one time a week, with the 2 horses early in the morning, like 4 o'clock, and he'd have this big, long sheepskin coat. He'd put the collar up like this, and then he had a fur hat. In New Haven, the kids thought he was Daniel Boone. He would go to R.G. Davis and pick up the feed for the cows. Now, he had to go early in the morning. It was an all-day trip. Probably get home before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So on his way home, he would stop at McCarthy's Bakery and pick up the day-old cakes, coffee cakes, whatever, and bring them home and have them on the front seat of this open truck with just a white paper over it, tied with a string. And we'd have a ball, because there was no one home to make anything sweet for us. So even these day-old cakes were just fine.
Where was the bakery?
It was in the Fairhaven area. And
Well,
a week, maybe once a week, and carry the bread piled up on his arm, no bag or nothing, piled up like this from his truck, and we'd keep it in our pantry. Now, the Busties lived up the street, and he wouldn't go up there, it was too far. So their bread would have to stay in our house until the kids came home from school, and they'd come in and pick up their bread. Then I went to the school on Mill Road, the one-room school, and walked, and I remember the roads were just muddy roads, and there were 6 grades in there, 1 teacher, and if old Mrs. Page lived next door, that's where Vicki Strickland is right now, she'd come over and start the fire, so that when we got there, at least the fire would be started, and we would get the water in her house, a pail of water and 1 dipper, and that would last us all day long, and everybody drank from the same dipper. My father always raised 2 pigs, so we had that for meat, during the winter, along with the chickens. And so with the pigs, he would always butcher his own pigs, made his own sausage, put it in the casings, and he had a method where he put that big long sausage in a big round wooden tub like this, and fill the tub right up to the top, and pour hot lard in there, which we made our own lard from the pigs. We never did bacon. We cut that up and boiled it down. Talk about your cholesterol.
Oh, when you're dying, your father did that too?
Cut out his
Not so
hams
much, but
and
I'm thinking about a few things that she said with the old Italian people. When I came back out of the service, I butchered a few pigs. And we came back out because after the war, everybody had a pig in the backyard. And there was an old Italian man, and we butchered 3 pigs for him, fellow named Branford. And when I got all through, I took them all back to him, and I thought I'm doing one of the greatest things in the world. I took everything back. The heart, the lungs, the liver, everything else, And I got there and I asked him for the money, and he said, I'm not going to pay you because it isn't all here. And I had forgotten one thing, and he wanted the intestine. So an old timer used everything but the squeal out of a pig. Everything but the squeal. And then one other item this lady was talking about. Years ago, like I know my grandfather and my father, when they went to North over to Fairhaven to get a load of feed, the day before you loaded a load of hay to go over there. So when you went with a load of hay, you come back with a load of grain. And that's how you went. You loaded both ways. I know they did, and I don't know about the rest of them, but you never went over with an empty wagon. You always took a load over.
Your Father Ducro.
My dad, well, my real dad died when I was very young. I was only about 2 or 3 years old. But my grandmother she owned a lot of property around the quarry there, where I was born in Twinley. They call that the new house, and I guess it was the last one, the oldest one that was knocked down, I guess. But she rented a lot of these places. She had rents around there, and all the people worked at the quarry. And but the other thing is, my grandmother never liked my mother because I'm a cross. I'm Italian and Irish, and the Irish are fitting too good at the time. So, at that time, everybody had their close-knitted areas. I was more or less, I got along with everybody, but I would be down to Marone's house, or I'd be down to Bocelli's, and they'd say, well, it's a figlio Caterina, which meant the son of Catherine. And I was sort of a wanderer. I would always be going somewhere. Even at the Zano's house, I slept there many, many times. So I was never home. But I had a great time. I ate very well. So I would visit all the time, So, like with the Marones, there was 4 boys there, and I fitted right in there. They used to count heads. They're all boys in one room, So one more didn't make any difference. And the cousins were the Bocellis, and they were the same way too. So, but it was like one big happy family when we were kids anyway. And nobody knew who was poor because we were all poor. You know, it didn't make any difference. We had a hell of a lot of fun though, even being poor.
What did you do for fun?
What did I do?
Besides sneaking down to the swimming hole?
Oh, I worked at the quarry for a while. I didn't like it there. There was a young assistant superintendent, John McKernan, and I never clicked. So he said to my stepdad one day, he says, "What's the matter with that kid?" I said, "I don't know, maybe because he's a half Irish." I think he fired me 3 times. And every time he fired me, I'd have to go down and see Mr. McKern, Alec, the big boy. And I'd come in and he would turn to me, "Well, you go back up there, you tell John I want to talk to him. Now you behave." I said, off I'd go. And I'd go back up. And John would say to me, "I fired you." I said, "Yeah, but you go down and talk to your uncle because he just hired me back." And this went on and on and on until finally I left there and I went to work up in Meriden, drove truck, express off it, lied my age, said I was 21 and I wasn't. I had a union book and the whole thing. So finally somebody found out what my age was. And he was the mayor at Meriden at the time, H.C. Smith, Carl Smith. He called me in. He never pronounced my name, Provenzano, but I wore a football jersey, 24, and he said, "Hey, 24, come here." I came in, he said, "How old are you?" I think I was 19 or 20, just before I went to service. And he said, "You 21? I said, "I got a union book." He said, "I'm asking you, are you 21? I said, "I got a union book." I wouldn't answer, I didn't want to lie to him. So he said, "When was you born?" I looked fast, you know. So I told him, I said, "I was born in 1920, you know." So he says, "Come on," he says, "you're not old enough to be driving." And I was driving New York then. I was driving New York run. I was only a kid. That's before, of course, turnpikes and all that. Route 1 was the only one. And talk about the Tamiami Trail, boy, that was something down through there years ago when you had to go down through there. And even as young as I was and as crazy as I was, even scared of that. Well, they let me go, and I went back up. I was going to go into service. I knew I was going to go into service in 42. So I said, "Well, I'll go up and I'll just tease John McKernan a little bit before I go." So I went back up and I seen Mr. McKernan and Alex. I said, "I'm going into service in a couple of months, but I need some money for spending money." So you go up and see John. I knew he was going to send me. And I went up there, I would drive truck around the circle. From those days they had, not like what they got today, they had big steam engines up there and they had these Mack side dumps and you'd just drive in a circle all day, load, unload. And I think I stayed up there about, I don't know, a couple, 3 months before. I went in June and I think I was there in March. But I needed spending money. That's the only reason I went back to work. So finally I told John I was going into service. He said, "They'll make a man out of you." And they'll make one out of you too. You're not that old. I always had a comeback. So I went to service, came back, and I went down to see Mr. McKernan was still living and still in charge. "We're already going to go to work." I said, "I'm going to work tomorrow morning." Go back to see John. I said, "Oh, no. I said, "I've been halfway around the world. I'm not coming back to this rock pile out there right now." So I never did go back to work there. But I guess John was happy about that too.
Do we know that that's the New Haven Trap Rock Quarry that you're talking about? I don't know if you mentioned that or not.
Yeah, I guess all of us pretty much worked up there. One time or another, New Haven Trap Rock.
It's been 45 years. It's down a tunnel for blasting the rock. They make it about 4 feet wide, about 4 feet high, and they go in about 100 feet. And then they weigh out about another 100 feet each way. And we used to have to stand in line, bend over, push the box, the dynamite box between our legs.
Oh, the Ashford business.
The only area you got there was compressed air, blowing air in there. If somebody didn't take a bath for a week, boy, you knew that. And there was nothing worse than the smell of dynamite. When you got out of that hole, you had a headache.
That Berkeley's was the worst.
And
Works in the DuPont.
And we had a couple old foremen there, they said, put the young fellas up front, so we used to have to go in first.
That's right.
Often thought if something ever happened, we'd never get out.
What were the tunnels for, Joe?
They
To
broke
break up
up
the
the
rock.
dynamite, they put so many feet of dynamite, and they packed it with crushed stone, and then dynamite, crushed stone, and then they blast, and it would raise the whole mountain.
Right,
And then set it, so they'd break up the stone.
Oh, my goodness.
They put in maybe 35, 40 ton of dynamite in that hole.
And we lived below it,
Everything
and
was
our
done
house
by
would
hand.
shake, yeah.
What's that?
I said, we lived below it, and our house would
Oh, yeah,
shake.
everything would shake every once in a while, the paint stone.
They brought the dynamite up in a boxcar. Everybody knows what a railroad boxcar is. That's the amount of dynamite that was in one of those loads. Sometimes two of them. They had a couple of major accidents there
The pressure too.
over all the years.
My father made those tunnels.
Look at Pat.
During the war years.
She was down there every day.
Yeah, I started off by saying I was a stone's throw away from Trap Rock. We lived right across from Trap Rock. It was on Porter Road. Some of these blasts that they had, you never know what to expect. They would blow the whistle, they would stop all the traffic. And most of the time, you just heard the rumble. But other times, it was more than rumble. My mother had sheets on the line this one day, and the sheet was shredded to bits. The stones came down, and we had a garden down below, and we had boulders this big, you know. No one got hurt. You know, we just-
500 feet.
Oh, yeah. But that was the exception. It happened once in a while, but you got out of the way after that one.
Well, that rings a bell. When I was in the service, they said, "Hey, bro, you don't get shook up when we get artillery ground shaking." I said, "Hell, I lived with this home. Home moved. They never thought nothing of it. You know, I mean, you get used to that, and the ground shaking. And they said, "Well, geez, you really lived like that?" I said, "Hey, that's where I came from." You know, so artillery and all that stuff, bombing, never really bothered me when I was in there. The service. Maybe we had one right foot out ahead of us already.
Talk about air pollution. You lived around that quarry like we did.
Dust.
All you had was dust flying around. Our mothers couldn't even hang clothes out a lot of days, so you'd have so much dust.
Today, you're still getting away.
Terrible.
Yeah, and today it still sits in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not as bad as then.
No,
I had a paper route. It was so long that my brother and I had to split it up. We had a total of 55 customers. Well, I'll tell you the extent of the route. You'll see how far the people were stretched out. We'd start at the North Branford package store. We go down Forest Road up to Jurors Lane. Come back from Jurors Lane, go up to Mill Road, to Totoket Road to Spazzano Farm. Come back down to Totoket Road. Go down Route 80 to the East Haven Town Line. Come back. Go back up to Totoket Road to Williams Road. Come back, take Route 80 all the way up. You go down to Twin Lake Road to the Marcusio Farm, which is in the area of Colonial Drive. And it took 55 people, 55 families in all that territory. Now we're talking about 39, 40, and 41. So there weren't too many people.
More houses now.
Well, the two of us would start at about 3:15, and if we weren't home by 5 o'clock, we got no supper. So we really pedaled.
But you didn't have to worry about the automobiles them days either.
No, and the register was 22 cents, 12 cents for the week, 10 cents for Sunday, and the register used to give you the tires because they wore out so fast.
So you delivered by bicycle?
Oh, bicycles, oh yeah, in a big register bag. Reins. Yeah.
Talking about bicycles, I remember working at the stand. I used to work at Dewey's railroad, sidewalk vegetable stand. And your brother Louie used to work out on the fields, bring in those beets and carrots that I used to hate to watch. Stand. But anyway, we had this one customer who used to come with her electric car.
Oh.
I'll always remember her. They'd stop by, and she'd come by once a week, pick up vegetables.
Was that your first job?
Franklin?
From what, did you get paid?
I don't remember what I got paid.
Where did you have the stand in front of the house?
It's in, almost in front of her house, just to the side of it. The white one. They used to live at the White House then.
What looks like cement.
The pillars up.
Yeah, just one of the pillars. It
chapel?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's worse than that.
I've got 2 chairs out of it.
Hey, the Wynwood House through there. I remember when we were kids, there used to be snow drifts around 8, 9, 10 feet high there. We'd be walking on top, that's right where Dooley's Inn is right now.
Yeah, the only,
Speaking of drifting, I remember when I used to drift on Mill Road there.
By Wedmore's.
By Wedmore's.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yes.
the people with the farmers or whatever, the neighbors would go shovel it. It would be 2 or 3 days before you could, or maybe more before you could get through. And it would drift down by Spazano's there too.
Town of Food, I remember when he first got his, one of those tractors, Henry and my brother would come up from one end, and he'd come up from the other, and they'd meet up in the woods. And it would take quite a while as it drifted.
Other than that, probably used to be Cedar Lake Road, other than that.
Remember Mr. Whitmore, the big mustache, they had the sleigh and the horses, bring the,
The logs.
yeah, they bring the milk down to the Totoka and Route 80, where they used to pick up all the milk cans
My father
there.
lived down there too.
Yeah.
So did Mr. Panko.
Yeah.
And his granddaughters would come to visit him every summer.
Good-looking girls
He'd
there.
always stop at the store for ice cream for them.
Yeah,
They were beautiful little girls. They
yes, they were.
He was a fancy farmer, always well dressed
Yes,
up.
yeah.
Where
Well, the
was
mother
this?
was very, always the clean apron, white hair, I always remember her, she was a nice woman.
And you know, even when he was in his 90s, 95, 96, I still remember him on that swing out in front of his house reading.
Yes.
Where was the house they lived in?
On Mill Road.
Yeah,
One of the road where one of the augers
Little
stuff.
farmhouse.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
where Computer Road comes out, just as you go at the top of the knoll, that old farmhouse on the right.
Yeah, we used to work for them.
That was another big thing in our farm. We had to put the silo in for the cows. Lars Juniper's father and uncle would come to our farm and they would help us. And then when they were ready to do theirs, my father and a couple of fellows would go over and help them.
New pigs.
All the corn was cut by hand in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
The
Yeah.
farm is cut by hand, Joe?
Oh,
Cut by
yeah.
hand, they're like a sickle. Grab
corn
a
knife.
bunch of
Two
corn,
rows.
cut it, lay it down, keep going, then somebody come along with a wagon and pick it up, put it in the wagon.
And then you brought back the farm, you had unloaded it and frozen it.
The cutter, yeah.
I remember we got the first tractor in 1937.
And then down in North Branford, we used to go.
Yeah, the town hall,
Town hall.
for the senior citizens there.
Right.
Yeah, that's what
What kind of dances did they have there?
Square all square Love Days to Bradley Farm to Firehouse, East Haven over there, Fox and Firehouse down here. That's where we all did. Huh?
Yeah, the Grange Hall.
KFC in New Haven.
AFC in New
Yeah.
Haven, yes, the Knights of Columbus Hall in New Haven. But there, and that was one of the greatest.
Never went to the North River Athletic Club? Did you ever go there?
Oh, yeah, we used to.
Right in the shopping center.
The baseball games, remember the baseball games?
That's where we practiced, the football practice there, the old
We used
building.
to go on Sunday afternoon.
That was right up where the center is now,
In the shopping center.
Called the clubhouse.
the clubhouse?
They had a house where Anthony lived, and then the clubhouse behind the back, or something, the ball
And then they had
field.
the baseball diamonds
The
there.
ball field was right where your house is on.
That's where the football field was.
And, yeah.
The baseball field was down this way where it was a little flatter, but it still went uphill.
And more like
Left field was downhill.
We've heard a lot of good stories here, and it's getting, the hour's getting on. So I think I'll just go around and ask each one of you if you have anything else that you didn't mention that you'd like to tell us about.
Well, one thing, we talked about school, when we used to go here, when we were kids, we'd all go trapping for the furs, we would sell furs. Well, we had a couple of kids, if they didn't feel like staying in school, they'd come to school smelling of skunk. And the teacher would send them home. It's not what they were looking for to start. Right?
Anthony, you have something you'd like to add?
No, you hit about everything. It sounds like none of them go skating anymore. I still have ice skates, go skates,
I do.
but there's not much ice anymore.
Not like they
You got a toboggan home, there's no snow, go toboggan. Snowshoes, we have to go north to go walk in the snow, and they don't get as much
We
anymore.
used to go, I used to go up Demley's and get her with the horse and sleigh. Remember, we used to go sleigh riding on the, wouldn't even dare go on the road with the horse and sleigh now.
Well, one thing I don't think would happen today, when Anthony came home from one furlough before more years, we decided to get married. We decided on Saturday, we went to see Reverend Smith from our church. And he said, we're all right with him, we're going to marry on Tuesday. Well, I had had my blood test weighed, 5 days weighed. So we had to go get Judge of Probate, who was Ellsworth's foot. Poor Ellsworth had been in an automobile accident, and he was pretty well banged up. He got out of bed on Saturday, went with us down to Ruth Beers then at her house. She still had the office in her house. And on Saturday night, Mr. Smith, Mr. Foote, and us, we went and we got a marriage license. Now, I would think today you could do that.
I don't think so.
You have no Ruth Beers, or you have Mr. Foote.
No, and we have modern technology, yeah.
Computers would be closed down for the weekend.
Ralph, you got something you'd like to add?
No, other than you ask Curly what he did when he was a boy, I could just touch on the drum corps a little bit more. At that time, that was it. There was no Little League or bitty basketball, there was nothing, for recreation. And that was really our life. And, we practiced once a week, sometimes twice a week. And every weekend come spring, we were off someplace. And we probably would never got out of North Branford if it wasn't for the drum corps. We'd get on a bus and we'd go maybe out of state or we might come back the next morning too. We'd be all night, but we were in good hands. But that was our life, and we grew up with that. And you don't forget those things, really.
And it was your father, Anthony, that
Yeah, there was other people. Mr. McCurran mentioned earlier.
responsible for that.
And the town, at that time,
Yeah.
the town supported you more. Today, so many things going on. It's a lot different,
A little simpler those days.
Yeah.
How many were in the drum corps?
One time, about
Well,
60.
I was looking at some pictures today. I was down at my brother's, and I did bring up some stuff I gave. Probably, that one picture I see there was right after the war, probably around 40 or so, marching, which is a good crew,
The only thing the townspeople didn't like about the drum corps, when we beat victorious out the field, we come home, it might be 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd have a little parade through town. They